Okay, Chris speaks here today with Tammy Taylor, and she has a very interesting story to tell me about what's taking place in the Talladega GOP. Is that correct?
Well, no, I do not reside in Talladega, my friend.
Okay.
I do not. Actually, Jada resides in near the Talladega area, where I guess her GOP is located in that area. So mine is Jefferson County, and Jefferson County GOP. Yeah. So I'm in the city of Adamsville.
Adamsville, okay.
Are you familiar with Adamsville?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are you familiar with Adamsville?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes,
so if you know much about Goat Hill, you know about it was hold on one moment. Alexa, stop. If you know about the corruption up in Montgomery, then you know much about Lanny Landfill Young. They gave him his nickname, Landfill Young. They were the ones with the screw sheets, and they had corruption with all the landfills.
That's where I remember that name from.
Waste management and all of those things. And so that's where my story somewhat begins, where I live in this small town of population of 5,000. Not too much going on in this small town, but we are a large city that is connected to the city of Graysville, Brookside, some other cities, Forestdale, and as well as Somerton, Dora, and Birmingham. So my question to my city council one day was about the it was like this waste that was being transferred or transported here from New York and New Jersey. They were hashtagging it poop train.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
I do vaguely remember that.
Okay, if you look up the hashtag poop train, you would see that it was a train that was coming in from out of state, and it ended up on the Birmingham track in the city of Birmingham. It was taking too long to get the stuff off of the truck, and so it called in so many people to kind of remove the train. Why was the train there? Where was the train headed? When they found out that it was headed to my landfill, which is Big Sky Landfill in Adamsville. My mayor, she sits on this board for the landfill, Adamsville Landfill Authority Board, as well as our mayor pro tem, the mayor's ex-husband, who also was working for my city. And basically, it just unraveled and uncovered everything from that point on, talking about corruption.
What are their names?
Say that again.
What are their names?
Mayor Pamela Palmer, Palmer, and the mayor pro tem is Anthony Brooklear. Anthony Brooklear is the owner of Brooklear Pharmacy, located here in this area and in Somerton as well as Alabaster. Brooklear Pharmacy.
Okay.
Anthony Brooklear is the head of our economic development here in the city of Adamsville. The city of Adamsville have a very high number. The statistics are very high for child poverty in this community. I ran for mayor in my town in 2020. And the questions I had prior to the 2020 election was, where was our tax dollar going? How was it being spent? And when Poop Train came in, I was trying to figure out, well, I didn't know much about the Poop Train. What I did know is that if we're hauling in out-of-state waste, that means some funding had to come in from somewhere, and I just needed to know how much and what was the plan for this new transaction. So the question I had was about the finances.
You said you didn't know much about the Poop Train, then we lost connection there for a second. And what'd you say following that?
Yeah, could you hear me now? Could you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I said I didn't know much about the Poop Train or any waste being transported from out of state. There was no meetings held about it. There was no question asked to the citizens of Adamsville who pay tax dollars here about whether or not we should haul it in. I knew nothing about any city annexation. So the only question I was really concerned with was being that everyone in the next city over, which is the town of West Jefferson, they were questioning this, they call it a sludge. It was a truck that was bringing it from the train to the landfill, and it got all over some of the residents in the town of West Jefferson's yard, their street. It was a spill in the street. It got on their cars. And so they were coming to my mayor having a discussion or wanting a meeting about what was it, this sludge that was spilling, that was all over their streets and, you know, headed to the landfill, which that's also a city that's connected to Adamsville. So when I saw that there was a town hall, or basically a meeting, a community meeting where West Jefferson forced the hand of my city to have a discussion about it, it made me go to the meeting to figure out, well, what is this thing these people are talking about that people in Adamsville know nothing about? So I go to the meeting and I hear about it happened at Bottonfield Elementary, which is now Minor Middle. And my mayor didn't come to this meeting. The mayor pro tem didn't come to this meeting. Nobody in Adamsville who was a leader in my city getting paid my tax dollar was at this meeting. And they were talking about the landfill. So what I learned from that meeting was that they basically were hauling in this waste. I later on contacted my mayor to figure out, well, we're receiving waste from out of state because, Chris, you know, when you go to the bathroom and I go to the bathroom, do you know that it flushes and it goes somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
It has to be treated, right?
Right.
Well, this waste we were getting were not treated. It was basically it was waste that was put on this train, brought into our city, which was causing a lot of buzzards. What the town of West Jefferson was saying, these buzzards and all types of smells and funky odors, or what may have you. It was just really, really like causing other people to be sick in that community. And that train even ended up in the town of Parrish, believe it or not, Parrish.
Wow.
So I asked the question, well, we're receiving this, how much money are we receiving? And what is the 5-year, 10-year plan for the city of Adamsville to receive a community center? I've been living in this town for a couple of years, Chris, and I wanted to know why didn't the children have a community center? So the money coming in, I had to figure it out. Well, the mayor got pretty upset. And she tried to make it seem as if I was harassing the workers at City Hall, which told me something, they were hiding something. So let's fast forward, right? I'm requesting documentation, the 5-year audit, bank account statements, landfill authority information. When was the last time they had a meeting? What was the last time? What was the minutes? I was asking for the minutes of these meetings pertaining to the floods that they were hauling in. I mean, I was asking real questions that no other citizen in the city of Adamsville could ever ask. And to the point where I was so determined, I had to file a FOIA to even get the information because it just took forever giving me the information. Well, do you hear that noise or is it me?
I don't hear a noise. I have an air conditioner running in the back. That could be it.
Yep, that's it. That's what I hear.
Turn that off.
Yeah, I don't want you burning up, Chris, now. We burning up on my account. Okay. So this is where it leads to my mayor, or the mayor pro tem, contacting the Jefferson County GOP because I was on the steering committee at the time. And I was working hard for Republican candidates. Let's be clear from the beginning here. I want to be very clear. I am a conservative. I'm a hardcore conservative. So hardcore. Yes, I went to the governor's ball. We received these beautiful cups. I love Alabama. I am a conservative. Okay. But I'm part of an organization that is just clearly are missing the mark. You have some Republicans that that have heart, they have goal, they have grit, and they love this state as well. And you have some of the good, I call myself a white hatter. You have some good ones in the Republican Party who are white hatters. So I don't want to discredit the ones who are actually doing good work
Right.
for our state. I want to be very clear because I know those people, and I don't want to put everyone in that same box. But basically, it leads to I questioned my mayor about these things. Her nephew was sitting on the council in my city. It made me question the validity, the integrity, the character of everyone on my council when they did not contact us all. I remember looking up the address of the mayor's nephew in the in on our map here. We are separated into 5 sections, and I realized that the mayor nephew, who is the son of her sisters, was using her sister's address to run in that seat where he was now being seated, and he was not supposed to be in that district, run in that district, because his address was being used of his mother's and not his address. His
So he
district was
illegally ran.
he illegally ran for his District 5 seat, who his mother's address, which is the mayor's sister. So I'm living in this incestuous pool, right, of a town, which I'm now realizing that he illegally ran, and his
Do you know their
address,
name?
yes, his name is John Click, Jonathan Click, and his mother's name is Debbie New,
Okay.
Neu, and her address was in District 5. His home address was in District 1. District 1 is where the mayor pro tem lives, and they want him to stay on the council, so he could not run against that one. You understand? So he had to find a way to get on the council, and that was use his mother's address, which is the mayor's sister's address. So I come across this information, and like a light bulb comes on, right? I post this information of the map, his address, circled it, X marks the spot. I did all that work, send it out to the community on my community page, which is at Activate Adamsville, my community page, and I sent it out to everybody and let them know that he is not supposed to be in this seat. So I forced his resignation. I go to the council, waiting for them to bring it up, and they go into executive, I guess like an executive meeting. The
Mm-hmm.
mayor the mayor and the mayor pro tem calls for an executive meeting. In that meeting, I understand now that they said that they read his resignation letter. He had resigned, and he was no more. But guess where he also was working at the time? That why even question all of this as well. He is the freaking president of president at the landfill, president, the VP of operations at the landfill, the Big Sky landfill. So I'm like, maybe that's why he's like, could you hear me?
Is putting all this together. You've got the mayor, the pro tem, the entire city council in on this right here together, and are getting rich off this landfill.
Off of this landfill. But before it was called Big Sky Landfill, it was called Green Mountain. And the owner of that, the owners of that Green Mountain landfill, I saw the agreement that they had with the city of Adamsville, prior to going bankrupt. Green Mountain went bankrupt, which is how Big Sky had took over, was like sold or whatever. I think they were forced into bankruptcy once the mayor and the mayor pro tem forced this annexation into the city of Adamsville prior to letting Poop Train come here. So prior to the Poop Train contract, Green Mountain automatically like goes file for bankruptcy, right? So I think they forced this man into bankruptcy, because the reason I asked about that Goat Hill article with Lanny Landfill Young in it is because it tells the story they tell this story about how Lenny Landfill Young shows up into Adamsville at that landfill, Green Mountain, on video and having a conversation with the owner of Green Mountain, asking about like possibly buying the landfill or getting him to kind of like getting to a contract to bring in the waste from New York and New Jersey. And he records this conversation. And then this is how the people, the guy on Goat Hill, whoever was the writer, the editor or the writer, whoever posted that, that's how I found out that I think
Eddie
all of this,
Curran?
huh?
Is it Eddie Curran?
That's who it was. It was Curran. Do you
I'm
know Curran?
friends with Eddie. Very well.
So Curran writes this like wonderful piece. And then I put pieces together with that article about Lanny Landfill Young. And then in that article, it tells this crazy story that Lanny Landfill Young comes in there saying that he was his son Sean's name. Like he came in with a fake alias, saying that his name was something else. And whatever, they was trying to get information from the owner at Green Mountain, right? And so it made me like think, like go deeper now into it, that all of this stuff was all planned. Green Mountain goes bankrupt, and all of a sudden, the mayor's nephew, who used to work for Green Mountain, by the way, he was a peon at Green Mountain, is now the freaking vice president of operation at Big Sky.
And then they get the contract for the poop train.
The poop train. Yep. It sure did. And so that's a whole nother story that connects to this story about when I question all of these things. The mayor nephew steps down from the Adamsville City Council, and then they contact the Jefferson County GOP because the mayor sees me in a Gary Palmer, Congressman Gary Palmer commercial. I mean, I'm a conservative. I think Gary Palmer was the better candidate. So I wanted to be in the commercial. So I get in the campaign commercial, and I guess the mayor, Brooke Lair and Mayor Pam Palmer sees this commercial. So they're calling the campaign. They're calling Jefferson County GOP. They're starting to call the people at the Republican Party who I'm associated with and start to talk about me to these people who I'm volunteering at the Republican Party. I'm not paid a dime to be at the Republican Party. I'm just I'm just doing things what's best for my community, my city, my county, my state, right? And my nation as a whole. So they call and they make a complaint. And unbeknownst to me, I get a call from the then president, Sally Bryant. She is Jefferson County's president of the Jefferson County GOP at the time, and she wants to meet at my house. So I prepare some, finger foods for us. She's coming over to Adamsville to beat down Poop Train Adamsville. They don't look nothing like Mountain Brook or anything like that, right? My little town. Right. But I prepared for her to come, and she came to my house, and I'm thinking she want to have a conversation about possibly doing something great in the Jefferson County GOP to talk about the minority vote, bringing in minority, because I was just voted on to this a coalition / like we just started this organization. We were going to be focusing on the minority vote, and I gave some great ideas, and so they put me ahead of it. I'm thinking she coming to my house to talk about that. She comes to my house and she's like, well, I think you need to take a seat back for a little bit because we're getting calls from people at Adamsville saying that you're out here trying to make a name for yourself, and we don't want other Republicans feeling a certain kind of way and not vote or support our Republicans that's running. And I'm like, well, who are we talking about? Like, who's calling you saying this and saying that? I need names. And she lets me know who they were. And it was my mayor. And it was Mayor Pro Tem, Anthony Brooklear. They were calling, complaining like some babies, whining, complaining, crying, and complaining to like like the GOP was my daddy or my mommy, right? It pissed me off to even hear that they're complaining to an organization that I'm involved with heavily. So then I asked Sally, I say, look, like, I don't see these people at meetings. They're not knocking on doors for candidates. They're not in the hot sweat, sweating, trying to get good candidates elected. And in fact, I've never seen a dime that come through for any of our Republican candidates from these people in this town, right? And she's like, well, we don't
Right.
want to lose their support and everything. And I said, well, I looked up to see if any, what's funny is I had just recently looked up to see if any of my mayors or the mayor pro tem supported any Republican candidates, because I just knew that they were Democrats. I knew that they were like white liberals who was faking the funk to be whatever anybody wanted them to be just to run. And so I looked it up like prior to Sally showing up to my house, and the only candidate that Anthony Brooklier ever gave money to at the GOP was freaking Paul DeMarco, who was actually running against Gary Palmer. He was running against Gary Palmer at that time, but prior to that, Paul DeMarco was the president of the Jefferson County Republican Party just recently prior to Chris Brown winning, right? And so Paul DeMarco ran for Congress district for District 6, Congressional District 6 against Gary Palmer and lost, but Anthony Brooklier was funding, like he sent $1,000 to Paul DeMarco's campaign. I mean, but that's not a lot of money to the richest from the richest man in Adamsville. Like, this man is like crazy rich. Like, he's the richest man in Adamsville, seriously. So I say it to Sally, and I'm like, why are you even in my living room talking about these people who does nothing for the Republican Party? I go hard for the Republican Party in Jefferson County. I work my butt off. Why are you in my living room talking to me about these people who call you, say X, Y, and Z? And I was offended. I was very offended that we were even having this discussion about these quote unquote Republicans who were calling to cry and complain about this black girl. There's one black girl who you have at the Republican Jefferson County GOP. It threw me off. It sort of literally gave me feels like someone was trying to chastise me. I'm the only chocolate chip at the Jefferson County GOP, girl. And I can't believe that you are in my living room having this conversation with me about people who's hauling in human waste from out of state into our freaking state. And you're talking to me about them. Like, why the heck are we not having a conversation with them about hauling in human waste from out of state? And
because that's going to upset their money train. It sounds to me like what is going on here.
Yeah, that literally set the tone for what I now thought of how the Republican Party left a bad taste in my mouth at this moment. And I start questioning everything. So I start stepping back a little bit and really just start focusing on the politics within my local city, right here in the local city. So I could not be on I basically started questioning everything at the Jefferson County GOP. I started having conversation, but obviously no one was really trying to have a conversation about outreach, getting more young Black conservatives or even people who identify as a conservative. Now, my goal is never to turn someone into a Republican, right? But my goal is to inform people about the crime, the things that's going on in their community, and how is it affecting them? How are these things affecting your wallet? For you to really start thinking outside the box and stop voting the same way you always vote, but really look at the policies at hand to really understand politics, looking at policies, right? That's my goal. It's always my goal, and not to turn someone into a Republican, but yeah, eventually you will have to vote Republican if you're going to start voting conservatively, right? Technically, that's how it is. So that's my goal. But in order to even get there, you have to have a team of people on the Republican Party who has that same vision and to truly understand how we can start looking at the crime rate that is like the murder capital rate in Birmingham alone, with Black people murdering each other and Black people being murdered. That murder capita rate is the same as Chicago, where Birmingham is so much smaller than Chicago, right? So I'm saying we look at this issues at hand where a mother, a Black mother, child, or relative is dying at the hand of another Black person in the city of Birmingham. Maybe we should like kind of like do outreach in that area to get everyone to understand like the leadership that they currently have is not really protecting them and protecting their families. And let's focus on that. Like these are the conversations that I was having at the GOP. I don't think that that was like a main concern, to some people to really understand like how we can really start showing that the GOP does have a heart. Some people at the GOP do have a heart, some of them, but as a collective, I think that so many have their own personal interests involved as leadership. They are missing the mark.
Yeah, because me and a friend was having a conversation the other night, and we was talking. I said, Republicans are missing such a golden opportunity, because Black people want the same things as white people do. They want their kids to grow up and get an education and go to college and not to be murdered for some senseless reason out there on the street. They're conservative on so many issues, and they're missing a golden opportunity by not reaching out to try to bring more into the party. This is the big tent, but yet they're pushing it away until they just want just a select few.
Yeah. So when you said it right there, you said outreach and bringing in. Well, there can't be no outreach. I had even brought in K. Carl Smith. He writes for also the 1819 News. But K. Carl Smith is the president and president of Frederick Douglass Republicans here in Birmingham. And I brought him to the meeting one day, and he said this one quote: "We can't do no outreach unless we do inreach within the party," right? And I think that that's the issue. It's like, if I can't hold you accountable, Chris, as my brother, if you say, we're in this together, if I can't come to you and say and pull your coattail and tell you where we missing the mark, how can we do better, then I don't think that we're not on the same team, so technically we're not really working together for the sake of for the good of this state. I just think we all have our own personal interests, and you want to do your thing, you telling me do my thing, and you telling me basically like I gotta be like you in order to get things done. Well, I'm not a sellout. One thing I'm not is a sellout, and I would never ever do something just to benefit me and not really think about my neighbor, or my fellow citizen. And I think that personally, some people in any party, Democrat, I know Democrats that think the same way. So it's no different, But when I start noticing that we are not doing the outreach to really change some things here in the state, it made me pull back and just focus on what's going on right here in the heart of my own city, where the Black Warrior River. What was funny is this: here we are calling ourselves conservatives, right? But then there's a story about this landfill and leach 8. The thing I heard called leach 8 that was leaking into our Black Warrior River. It was affecting our water. It was affecting our freaking water, where we fish at, where we swim at, in this river that goes up to Tuscaloosa now. You know what I'm saying? Like, this river runs deep. It goes into the ocean. And I wonder why we're not focusing on that. And so that's where my focus is.
And you'll be called a liberal environmentalist extremist.
Right. I even had to contact Black Warrior River Keeper, Mr. Nelson, to give me a better understanding about how this thing works, because he came with, I read an article that he was talking about the landfill and how I guess he was doing testing in the water, and he was the one who figured out that leach 8 was coming from the landfill into the river. So I contacted Mr. Nelson Brook and wanted to be informed more. Now I have a better love for tree huggers now, because I spoke to Nelson Brook, and he really had the deep story about how the landfill and what is it? ADEM, Alabama Department of Environmental Management, who's not managing Jack Dilly squat. You know, it got me to realizing that all the way up to our governor's office, they were not doing their jobs. They're not doing their freaking, and it pissed me off. It made me so angry that you have people who sit in these seats and just clearly is missing the mark. I started to host, I did a town hall, and so many people came out to that town hall so I can inform them about what was going on in our backyard, that people just were not aware how it was affecting our health. And you would think people would care about that, but they did not. So I put all this, every information that I received, Chris, I put it out on my community page, to the point where I was calling my mayor that she was acting like Kim L. She was acting like this was like a communist socialist city, telling the city workers to not talk to me because I was asking information every day. I was up there mostly every day trying to get information. And I said that that was pretty, you know, communist of her to try to get city workers outside of city hours to not friend me and talk to me and give me information. And it led to the lawsuit where the mayor said that I was defaming her name and slandering her name. You can look it up. It's called the City of Adamsville versus Tammy Taylor. That was in the state court. And the state court, she lost. But I had to countersue Tammy Taylor versus the City of Adamsville and federal court because my constitutional right was totally violated, tramped over, walked on, only because I'm in a city where I feel like you should not be hauling out of state waste into my state, which tells me our officials from the state from the county to the state were not on their freaking jobs, and our city was not on their jobs at all. But I'm gonna tell you who are the heroes. I'm gonna tell you who's the hero in that story. It is our county commission. I have some issues with our county commissioners, but they were the heroes in that because they basically had they were ones who had to come through, file a lawsuit against the city because the rail yard they were hauling in that the trains were hauling in the waste. They failed. The City of Adamsville and the landfill Big Sky failed to get a permit to bring in a different type of entity into the rail yard, and that's what stopped it.
Now, is the so the poop train is now stopped?
No. So they built their own rail spur recently into the to the landfill. And so they're finding ways to bring it in underneath our nose. But then I'm still in the lawsuit with the City of Adamsville and the mayor. This is where we're currently at. So the federal judge made her, I guess it was like her statement to the mayor, telling Pam Palmer that we will go to trial and that she will be tried as herself and as mayor because of how she handled this case, how she handled me, and as herself and as mayor. So the mayor appealed her judgment. However, you know, whatever the judge said, she appealed it, and it went to the 11th Circuit Court. And when it went to the 11th Circuit Court, we had just argued there. And now we're waiting on the response from the 11th Circuit Court in Georgia that if the mayor is going to be tried as herself and as mayor. But the mayor's argument, believe it or not, in a city that is like have so much child poverty, Chris, the mayor is fighting to only be tried as mayor and only to be tried as mayor so that she doesn't have to pay a red cent out of her money. And she doesn't want to be tried as herself. So she's fighting to utilize our tax dollars to fight a case that should have never even touched the courts. Like her case was dismissed because it was just dumb. And I proved my case, what I said, and everything she used. Like Everything I said on Facebook was true. And so my counter, my me suing the mayor, to me, it's a situation where you just look at it that these people spending all this money to fight a case when I think that could have been enough money to even build a city, a community center for the kids in the city of Adamsville. What's sad is when I ran for mayor in 2020, the people of Adamsville knew not. You're trying to educate and inform, and it's just going in one ear out the other. And so it leads me to the conversation about the GOP. Like, why the heck would the GOP be at my house when I worked tirelessly, endlessly to be a voice and to be whatever it is that I knew what, the beauty behind being conservative and school choice. My school choice is homeschooling my children. Been doing that for the past 15 years. And I personally believe that, most Democrats, they are really not for school choice, but conservatively Republicans have fought that battle to make sure that I had that God-given right to homeschool, to home educate, which is why I'm a conservative.
That's great to hear. I wish we had more people, white, black, Latino like that, but unfortunately, they fall for. And I hate to say this because I guess I am technically part of the media, but they are vultures, and they have a certain agenda that they're going to try to force down everybody's throats, and people buy it way too often.
Yeah. So I took a step back from the GOP. I also was the president of the North Jefferson County Republican Club in the North Jefferson area. We met in Garndale at Jim and Nick's. COVID hit in 2020, Chris, and there was this rule that restaurants could not be open. They were doing drive-throughs, so we couldn't meet anymore in 2020 when COVID hit. And so we took a standstill, like we were just like not meeting. So when they started to open up restaurants again, they were only allowing restaurants to like let people in, and they had to skip a table. Like, you remember that whole weird thing, right?
Well, see, I refused to go because I was not going to skip a table. I was not going to wear a mask. I was not going to do that. So during the whole COVID thing, I went for 2 years. I didn't get a haircut. I didn't shave.
That part, but guess what? I was running a whole campaign in 2020 running for mayor, and I did not wear a mask at my campaign headquarters. And that's the big deal the mayor was utilizing to the Black community. Oh, they're not wearing masks. And I'm like, COVID is a joke, like seriously, how is it that I could wear my mask inside the restaurant and then sit down and take my mask off? It just didn't make sense. So I'm trying to speak common sense to people. Like, listen, wake the heck up. So,
Yeah.
so during this season, it was the most weirdest. 2020 was like this weird season where it allowed me to, like the great separation, to separate the dumb from the people who were actually thinking. So it allowed my circle to become so much smaller that I really was only connected to people who were free thinking and thinking, period. People who just was like conforming. I could not like be involved in a conversation with people who was conforming. I totally released myself from people who was just falling a victim to whatever they were listening to on the news, instead of using their common sense of this fake back. To me, it was just a weird situation where I'm like, why are we forcing things in our body that didn't go through the proper stream of testing before going into the human body? Whatever happened to,
Yeah, I think the first case was reported here, I think on January 20th, and at the 1st of March, we're running trials on the vaccine. I'm like, wait a second, this ain't even been here barely a month yet. You already testing this vaccination? Come on now. And here this thing hits during the middle of a presidential election with a red hot economy against your opponent whose son is meeting with the Chinese people.
Somebody was see it's people like you who would have been welcome in my circle at that time, because I had to totally eliminate. I had to like do away with so many dumb people at the time. It allowed me to just focus on what was most important. And at that season, 2020, I'm president of the North Jefferson County Republican Club, and things were getting weird. So some of us who were thinking like me still wanted to meet, right? We still was trying to meet, but our older generation, the elderly was like dying from COVID, so they were staying
Mhm.
home, which was understandable because
Yes, I
that
totally understand
we
that.
were, we were figuring things out. But that, the younger ones who were just like, not trying to take the shot, but still wanted to meet to discuss all the things that we were noticing. There was a pizzeria in Fultondale that my first vice president, uh, he was telling me about this pizzeria on 31 in Fultondale. Uh, One was okay with us like meeting with no mask, and he wasn't doing all that separation of the tables. I was like, we're going. And we got there. We even had a presidential election party there. It was pretty dope. Like they invited us in with welcoming arms. Mad Pie's Pizzeria is the pizzeria in Fultondale, and the owner Nick was just phenomenal. And so we just stayed there. Once COVID was like miraculously over, we stayed there. We just
Yeah,
continued to meet
disappeared
there.
right after the election.
Yeah, it was magically over. We stayed there at this pizzeria, but unbeknownst to me, I did not know at this axe throwing pizzeria spot that they had a haunted house in the back area. It was like an escape room inside a pizzeria as well as an axe throwing place. So it was a fun like place
It's
for
kind
your
of
family to do
fun.
something different, right? But then I didn't know in October they had this haunted attraction in the backyard, right, where it was a haunted place. But they also had a bar there inside. But guess what? Jim and Nick's had a bar. We met near the bar at Jim and Nick's, where my
Mhm.
club had a little room that was close to the bar at Jim and Nick's. So it's this white woman that comes to my meeting named Julia Cleland, right? She comes to the meeting. We're all settled that we're meeting. It was around the governor's election. Lindy Blanchard was running against Kay Ivey at that time, if you remember how long ago that was. Um, and and Julia Cleland comes to my meeting. Julia says she's from Trustville, and she wanted to come to my meetings, and she wanted to see if we can start meeting at the country club slash uh, what do they call the Garndale Civic Center? I call it the country club. We work out there, we do all types of things there. But she wanted to like move from the pizzeria and start meeting at the city, at the Civic Center, Garndale Civic Center. And I'm like, well, it costs. The club is not making all that money to be paying renting to meet every month at the Civic Center, but um I'm gonna leave it up to the decision of the people at the club to see if that's what they want to do. So I asked the people, they said, no, we good, we staying here. But then they went and took it to the elderly people at the club to say, well, Tammy, as president, the bylaw says that you make the overall decision about where the club gets to meet at, because our husbands doesn't want us to come here where a bar is and it smells like cigarette smoke. And I'm like, well, I don't smoke, but I didn't smell cigarette smoke in this place. I seemed like they was coming up with every freaking excuse for us not to freaking meet there, and it was pissing me off. So here we are at the height of COVID. COVID is magically disappearing. People were being forced to get the jab to keep their jobs. You had our governor telling people that it was their fault while people were dying because they weren't getting the jab. We're going through all this stuff in this season, and you are more concerned about where we're meeting.
Exactly.
It threw me off, Chris. Like totally, it made me so sick to my stomach that it totally I just was like, screw it. I don't want to do. I'm gonna take a step back. If anybody wants to do anything else within this club, by all means, anybody please step up. You know what I'm saying? Like, please step up. It's code. I was like stressed out, wondering why are white women calling me. I mean, they were calling me on my phone, they were emailing me. These are women who call themselves Republicans, women who are still involved in the party, um, uh, they seem to like don't have to create this coalition to try to get the black president to do X, Y, and Z, move the way they wanted them to move, or else they were gonna start a whole nother club in North Jefferson County. And guess what they did? They started a whole nother club.
Wow.
They did. They started a whole nother club, and they got active. And I'm like, good for them, you know. They even started talking to some of our members and getting them to go there. And I'm like, by all means, do your thing. And it made me think like maybe they just didn't want the leadership of a black woman. I think my club was being run well. If you kind of like talk to people at the club, they'll tell you we were doing well until COVID hit. It's just
The name
that
of your club was what now?
Repeat that, Chris.
What was the name of your club again?
North Jefferson County Republican Club.
And what's the new one named that they started?
I don't know. I think it's called North Jefferson something Coalition. Yeah. And so Julia Cleland is the one who's over it. And yeah, I mean, and the word on the street is that they are like these people they just was like trying to find a way. I label it as is a black woman who's been the president of the North Jefferson County Republican Club, and then they come to this meeting. I think they came to the meeting where the Attorney General came by, because that's the meeting I think they were at. The Attorney General was there, so they showed up at the meeting, and that's when they were trying to like have this conversation. And I'm like, oh gosh, whatever. The people don't want to meet at the Civic Center. If you're gonna pay for it, then we go, you know. But technically, they said that they, you know, the members of the club wants to stay here at the pizzeria. Like, why can't we honor the pizzeria during COVID, who still let us meet with no mask? Why the heck can't we stay here? Exactly. You know, and we were actually still meeting in the height of COVID when everybody was scared to come outside. So I just put my foot down and I was saying it the way I needed to say it, and they felt like maybe I wasn't backing down or conforming, or how they all just kind of like gave in to the jab and the mask. Like, I wasn't doing that with this conversation. Yeah, it reminded me, literally, it left a bad taste in my mouth that they formed this other group. And I'm just like, what's the point? I'm just gonna focus on what's best for me. And so the lawsuit, the landfill, my community not having a community center, child poverty is very high in my city. I just like did away with those things and now focusing on this lawsuit. And what's funny to me is that while being in this lawsuit, I haven't seen any Republican really step up in this area and realize, like, why the hell are we transporting out of state waste from New York and New Jersey to the state of Alabama? And why wasn't ADEM, who's under the governor's office, being held accountable for this situation? Like, they were saying that this sludge was good for, I was up in Montgomery, and they were saying that this sludge was good for our crop. And I wonder, well, if it's so good for your crop, then you smear it on your corn and your freaking peas and everything. Like, I don't want that crap. Even though, I mean, manure, you know, where we understand the concept behind grass-fed animals and pooping on the crop, but human waste, like this, you saying this sludge is good for our crop. They were literally saying that at the ADEM hearing in Montgomery. It was the sickest and saddest thing I ever heard, but none of our representatives stepped up. I didn't hear anyone making a big stink about it, pun intended. I didn't hear anyone making a big stink about it. It just made me look at a lot of things differently with some people at the GOP. You know, you have this minority GOP organization at the Alabama Republican Party, who's supposed to be for minorities, and they're not doing anything. They just have a vote on the steering committee, and I don't see anything being moved in that area. Mr. Philip Brown has been over that thing since forever, and I'm wondering, like, what are we doing? So I'm just focusing right now, Chris, on things that's important. But let me tell you what broke me. That whole situation with white women telling me that they wanted to meet at the Country Club Civic Center and not at the pizzeria because their husbands are not allowing them. to come because it's a bar. And I'm like, well, it's a bar at Jim and Nick's. And when Jim and Nick's shut down and didn't allow us to meet, it was the pizzeria that allowed us to meet. And this is where we're at. But I just take a step back and I'm looking at it at Jada is going through so much greater things at the Talladega GOP that I don't wish that on my worst enemy. But for us to still be conservatives, I'm not trying to beat up the GOP. I just personally believe that there's so much going on here that we're not really people at the GOP is just like ignoring it.
Well, you keep focusing on things that you said that was important to you, and I'll help you fight this fight, and I'll make sure that this message gets out and you get some answers for how you've been treated and how you've been done. I can promise you that.
Yeah, to be in a lawsuit and not have the real support of the whole entire ALGOP, it breaks my heart. Now I have some support from some people, but it's supposed to be a whole group of people talking about Poop Train. Why the heck am I even in this lawsuit to begin with? Just because I called it out. Why are we allowing was it Siegelman? It was the Siegelmans, and it was Lanny Landfill, who was part of that whole landfill situation. That they're in Adamsville now. They're out of jail, right? They're out of jail, and they're still right back at it, right, with their shenanigans. And we're not even like questioning any of it. Like, why we're not putting the light on that? Here it is. I'm fighting this big old fight in the city of Adamsville, population of 5,000. That this landfill is claiming to be the largest. Their goal is to be the largest landfill to haul in that sludge.
Well, you've definitely given me a lot of information to go on, probably a 2 or 3 series articles here that I'll be working on and videos of. Is there anything else I should know before I get started on this?
Well, Chris, this lawsuit is still going on and on. I want you to look at again the depositions of what the mayor was saying into these lawsuits. The deposition is damning. Like literally, she tells on herself and how they're operating. And no one even like bat an eye about the fact that we have pure corruption in the city of Adamsville. And here I am fighting the fight, but then I have a whole Sally Bryan showing up to my house telling me I'm trying to make a name for myself. No, I'm just trying to protect the health of my family as well as everybody else in this community. Like, where's the support?
Well, you got somebody else that's going to fight with you. I think that's all the questions I got for you tonight. I'm sure I'll be back in touch with you the next couple of days. Is there any parting thing that you want me to, or you want to say to the people out here before we cut filming?
Yeah, I want to say that again, I love being a conservative. Conservatism has changed my worldview. It really was homeschooling that changed my worldview and the writings of Frederick Douglass, that allowed me to change my worldview on being a conservative. Again, I love being a conservative, and there are so many Republicans who are fighting the good fight. There's so many in there I cannot even name them all, but I don't want to put them all again in the same box. But there are some true issues with the Republican Party that we need to really analyze and dig deep down into fixing it, so that more people like me who was once a Democrat, who was looking for a home, there so many people out there that think like me but still voting Democrat. They're looking for a home, and I just want us to get our stuff together, our crap together, so that we can welcome these people back home the way Frederick Douglass and all the Black free slave abolitionists intended this party to be.
Hey, thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Have a good day.
You too.